Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today, my friends, we are once again talking about the current meta in Warzone, but instead of breaking down, some of the top setups for the weapons, I want to focus on just the weapons themselves and really talk about which weapons you guys should be focusing on in terms of what you want to level up, what you want to be using in game. Overall, going over the top meta weapons, the most competitive weapons that we currently have in the game, and ranking those in our general breakdown of all the weapons that we currently have in Warzone. So as we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated, as it does really help grow the channel. And of course, if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, if you're a part of that maybe 57% of viewers who have not subscribed yet, we're getting super close to 800K. It would be absolutely insane if we could hit that before the end of the year. So if you want to guarantee you're always up to date with everything going on in COD, between news, updates, loadouts, tips, it's all right here. Feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. So we are back here on our tier list of every single gun in the game. This is something we've gone over multiple times at this point, but we made this right as the Pacific update went out and we got a little feel for most of the weapons in the game. Since then, though, we've seen like 3 or 4 different weapon tuning updates, so a lot has to change here when it comes to what is top meta and what is generally competitive. So let's look first at top meta here, because this already needs some adjusting, right? There's some weapons in here that definitely do not belong at the current moment, including, I would say, both Kar 98Ks. Now, while they're both good from Vanguard and from Modern Warfare, both have really not lived up to the hype yet. The Kar 98K from MW has already received a couple of nerfs. The flinch resistance is not what it used to be anymore. It's still good for what it's worth, but it's not going to be as solid as it once was. So it's still competitive, just like the HDR is, just like the 3-line is, just like some of the other snipers are. It's just not the GOAT anymore. And same deal with the Vanguard Kar. This was good when you had like the 10x scope glitch and it could ADS instantaneously. Now, though, it's just not really feeling all that great. The Automaton has also received several nerfs, and I'm going to keep it a buck. I feel like the Automaton is just a viable rifle now. It was really, really good when it had no recoil, because it was a lower damage weapon, but it was also a laser beam. So just like the ground, just like the Kilo were not the best TTKs, but absolutely easy as can be to use, they were meta. Not so much anymore when they go ahead and they just murder the recoil, right? So that really is not anything too crazy at the moment. Focusing back up, though, for top meta, I feel like the current 4 in here, the Cold War AK, the XM4, the Owen gun, and the MP40 are all very, very solid, but there's also some other guns in here that I feel like deserve to be in that top meta spot. We're talking about the Type 100, one of the best SMGs in the game right now. I mean, the thing absolutely deletes players when it comes down to it. Very easy to use, doesn't have the best fire rate in the world, but when it comes down to it, the damage sort of counteracts that because it will still delete players. The Cooper Carbine absolutely is in the top meta conversation. This is probably the most versatile weapon in the entire game when it comes down to it. I mean, the thing just deletes everyone at any range. Yeah, they've nerfed it a little bit for both long range and close range. Even after some of the nerfs, it is still an absolute beast when it comes down to it. Another weapon that I absolutely feel like gets overlooked a lot is going to be the Lapa. It is awkward because it doesn't have the best fire rate in the world. It has probably some of the worst iron sights in the entire game, but it's still an absolute beast when it comes down to it, because the TTK at this point is pretty much unmatched, because previously its biggest competitions were the OTS and then also the Cold War MP5, and both of those are still very competitive SMGs when it comes down to it, hence why they're in the competitive category. But in all reality, they got nerfs, the Lapa did not, which makes it far and above the best SMG at the moment in terms of TTK. Its actual execution in game, like I said, is not the most convenient, so I see why people stray away from it, but there's no denying that if you're able to use this correctly, very few weapons can actually compete with this at the moment. I also want to talk about some of these weapons that are a little bit lower on the list and bring some of them up. For instance, the MG42 at first, I wasn't super sold on, but after using this a whole lot more, after getting used to the recoil and building it out the right way for range, the thing is an absolute melt machine when it comes down to it. Now, is it as good as the Bren, the DP? We'll talk more on the Bren here in just a moment. I wouldn't say necessarily, but it's still one of the more competitive weapons we have in the game when it comes down to it. Thing is an absolute melt machine. Like I said, it'll just destroy players left, right, and center. Another weapon I want to bring up is going to be the Sten. The Sten, when it comes down to it, is a weapon that personally I'm not super sold on, but there's no denying the stats. The thing has a pretty solid TTK, some absolutely insane mobility stats. Like, the thing will strafe like crazy. It has great movement all around, so it's a very aggressive SMG. And when I have picked it up and used it, it's felt very good. I don't have enough time with it to say, hey, this is my new favorite SMG in the game, but there's no denying it is a very competitive weapon. Now, going back to the Bren, this is one that I really wanted to focus on. I don't think anyone expected it to be as good as it is. I mean, the thing is a monster. It has the highest KD ever in Warzone history. I'm sure over time it'll start to drop down a little bit because a lot more mainstream players will realize, hey, this LMG that no one was really paying all that much attention to, no one was really giving it the time of day, it actually has an insane TTK, very low recoil, great for medium and long range. All around, it is a very, very well-rounded weapon, and one that I have been using a ton of recently. And like I said, the stats speak for themselves. It has the highest KD ratio ever out of any gun in Warzone history. You can't not talk about a weapon that has stats like that. Another weapon that I feel like is severely underrated when we first went through this list is going to be the AS-44. This thing does have some ugly recoil, let's go ahead and say. I mean, it's definitely not the prettiest in the world. It has a lot of bounce, a lot of kick, especially if you're on console. It's going to be way more noticeable without affected FOV. But just like the Lapa, the TTK is utterly insane on this thing. Just looking at true game data and going over some of the weapons recently, even without, plugging in all the damage modifications and whatnot, base to base weapons versus one another here, the AS-44's TTK versus a lot of the other rifles is unmatched. It is so much faster. I wouldn't ever build it to be a long range rifle. It's just not viable in that scenario. But for a close range sub, as we talked about in a video earlier on last week, the thing can be built to be just like the Cooper and used as that sort of SMG AR hybrid, and it is going to be a very, very good weapon in those cases just because its TTK up close, because it's a rifle but has such a good fire rate, is almost unstoppable. I don't think it's top meta because, again, the recoil is very, very noticeable, and it really is a PC favoring weapon, I think, at the moment. You could try it on console, especially for close range where recoil is not as big of a factor, but to be fully meta, it doesn't have that exact versatility that I'd be looking for in a weapon. It's definitely one that takes a lot more patience and a lot more skill to fully understand and to use, but if you can master it, like I said, very few things are going to be able to stop this thing because the TTK is just so absurd. Outside of that, though, I feel like the meta is in a pretty good place. There's a surprising amount of old weapons that I feel like are still very, very usable. Going into the Pacific, I thought we were going to see primarily only Vanguard weapons taking over, like what we saw happen with Cold War. But lo and behold, I mean, let's look at the sniping category. You could use almost any sniper in the game right now, and because the Vanguard weapons have pretty balanced stats, like their ADS is pretty brutal when it comes down to it, but they have decent damage, they can absolutely hang with the HDR, with the Tundra, with the SPR, the CAR, the Swiss, so on and so forth. I mean, the LMG category, you could use multiple ones from Cold War, multiple ones from Vanguard, but you could even use the PKM from Modern Warfare 2 and the Bruin if you wanted to, so like very competitive there. A lot of SMG choices, a lot of rifle choices. Obviously, there are some weapons that are better than others. I mean, the top meta category, these are the weapons that I'd focus on specifically, but also these are going to be, undergoing some tuning at some point in time. And a lot of these weapons, they'll fall down into this competitive area, and we have this massively open meta where you could use quite a few things, and over time it's only going to become more open and more open. So definitely a solid place for the meta at the moment, but if you're looking to level up the absolute best weapons, or you want to focus on using the best weapons that we have in the game right now, look at the top meta line here, look at some of the competitive options here between rifles, SMGs, all things of that nature. But with all that being said, that is going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel, or if you have not already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way you can always guarantee you are up to date with absolutely everything going on in the world of Call of Duty. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.